Welcome to Roger That, a podcast presented by HVAF of Indiana. I'm your host, Lauren Carpenter, and join me as we discuss how HVAF is ending veteran homelessness and how you can join us in our mission. We'll be having conversations with community partners, staff members, and even some of the veterans we serve. We hope sharing more of our story with supporters like you can shine a light and give a voice to this vulnerable population, because no hero should ever be homeless. It's May, which means it's Mental Health Awareness Month. Before we go further into this episode, I want to share that there is mention of mental health disorders, substance abuse, and suicide. If you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, please know there is hope. Please call 988 and press 1 or text 838-255. Mental health assistance for veterans is vital. The Veterans Crisis Line, managed by the Department of Veterans Affairs, reported a record number of calls in March of last year. The suicide hotline received over 88,000 calls, texts, and chats seeking assistance. That's almost 3,000 calls every day. And closer to home, sadly, the situation is worse. The Indiana Veteran Suicide Data Sheet, published by the VA in 2022, reflects that in 2020, 150 Hoosier veterans committed suicide. This is significantly higher than the national veteran suicide rate and the national general population suicide rate. The same report reflected that suicide is the 13th leading cause of death among all veterans and the second leading cause of death among veterans under the age of 45. Here at HVAF, 73% of veterans served in 2023 reported a mental health diagnosis or substance use issues. The most frequent mental health issues reported are depression, anxiety, trauma, and substance use disorder. HVAF strives to provide essential wraparound services for Hoosier heroes in need, including mental health services. In realizing that the presence of mental disorders is the strongest predictor of becoming homeless after discharge from the military, HVAF offers intensive therapy services, including a full-time licensed mental health clinician and 3 full-time peer mentors. Kascha, HVAF's therapist, provides intensive individual therapy, including individual and family counseling, substance abuse psychoeducation, sexual trauma counseling, post-traumatic stress disorder treatment, and suicide prevention.
There's just that judgment-free zone that a lot of people just feel is really refreshing. And so I think with that, we all kind of need that outlet in some capacity.
Kascha started working at HVAF in 2015 as a case manager. Since then, she has only grown in her skills and experience, including earning her LCSW a few years ago, a title every social worker strives for. In the social work world, there are multiple levels to get to the highly respected LCSW level. Did you know, after graduating with an undergraduate degree in social work, you cannot legally call yourself a social worker? Yeah, it's true. You must go back to school to become a licensed social worker, or LSW. After receiving the LSW title, some will go on to receive the LCSW title, which requires going through 2 years of supervision under someone with their LCSW, as well as passing a difficult exam. But after hours and hours of supervision and studying, Kascha passed the exam and officially added the letters LCSW after her name. And now, with this certification, she has been able to transition from case manager to therapist for our veterans.
I think I kind of got to a point where I'd done case management for so long. I had been kind of that supervisory role that I wanted something else to challenge me. And it wasn't that I wasn't being challenged in those current roles. It's just I was kind of at that juncture in my life where I just wanted to try something a little bit different. It worked out that the opportunity here presented itself. And I think, going through being a case manager, you're in some degrees kind of like a therapist as it is to our veterans. You're building rapport with them. You're trying to earn their trust. And in doing that, they're going to be telling you a lot of their struggles, whether it's early on, in the military. And so I felt like it was a natural segue to kind of move into that therapist role so that it was more I could focus on building the relationship with the veteran and kind of helping them with those struggles that were obviously then preventing them from, getting housing, those types of things, but just really focusing on the actual history and what the immediate struggles were.
With already having years of experience in case management with the veterans we serve under her belt, she had a unique advantage in being able to effectively provide therapy services for them.
just knowing how our veterans, operate. A lot of them come in, they don't have a ton of, trust in the system. They may not have had the best experience, with a different provider, those types of things. I think it was a very comforting thing for them to see that one of their previous case managers was now in that role. So a lot of them already knew my personality and just had that kind of familiarity, made it a little less intimidating for them going in. Because a lot of the initial ones that first started coming in and showing that interest, they were people that I had worked with before, or they had seen me in passing. And so it was kind of, going in and not, the whole deer in the headlights, like, I don't know this person. Are they going to judge me? It just was that more comforting, like, oh, okay. Like, she already knows what she's getting herself into if I walk in here kind of thing. Now we can just talk about it. And there's, not that fear of, potentially losing a service or like, rule breaking. It was, a lot of them had told me, they were like, coming in and talking to you in this capacity, it's not as intimidating because, like if they're saying that they're struggling with certain things within our program, there's obviously rules and expectations they have to follow. And so they may not be as forthcoming because they know what they could potentially, obviously there are consequences, but in that therapeutic setting, they're just like, I can tell you these things. It stays in here and we can work on it. And so I think that for them was just that huge comforting factor, and why I've been able to see more progress and have more success with some of those initial veterans that had come on.
When she first started as HVF's therapist at the end of 2022, she first could only do in-person sessions and for veterans only living in our transitional houses. But now she is able to serve all veterans. Yes, all veterans, even if they're not in any of our other programs. And she recently got her certification so she can do virtual sessions as well.
To be able to offer the telehealth option for our veterans, it really just opens up who we can reach. Because just doing in person, which again, it is perfectly fine. We were really limited in which veterans we could reach. They could really only be the veterans that had either, transportation to where they could come into the office or be within our program. Somewhere that is more, localized to the organization is really who we could kind of touch. And by offering the telehealth option, now any person, that has access to Wi-Fi, internet, has the ability to meet with me virtually. And those are all, again, very, it's a closed environment. There's not a million people behind me. I'm in my office still. But it gives them that ability to still receive services when they, under normal circumstances, wouldn't have been able to. And so that was something I felt was really important and needed, because even the vets that we have here, especially, in the winter, inclement weather, they're not always able to get on the bus or, wait out at the bus stop for, an hour. It's cold out. Or, they're having car issues. And so they would have to cancel those appointments. And I started noticing, like, okay, well, if I had the ability to offer you the same service, but you're in the comfort of your own home, would you still be interested in coming in and meeting with me? Then we have to adjust based off of the need. And so when I started telling people, like, hey, like, you could be at home, and as long as your phone or, your tablet, computer, whatever works, we can just hop on like a video call and, we can continue to talk. And so I think for a lot of people too, that was appreciated, because we recognized that the need was there, and we adjusted the services accordingly.
And you might think that the veterans she sees are mainly wanting to address PTSD from their time serving in the military, but that's not always the case.
What I've started to see, though, is primarily I get ones that come in that are like, hey, I have depression, I have anxiety. And a lot of that will run in conjunction with PTSD, as those are symptoms. A lot of them are going to come in and they have some type of trauma, no matter what, whether it is from the military, childhood. And so I do see all those ranges of trauma, and they will manifest in different ways. We've gotten a few that have come in that, you know, have experienced like military sexual trauma. And so we work through those as well. But then every once in a while, you know, we'll have people that come in that, you know, they might have a personality disorder instead. And so how we talk and our interactions are going to look a little bit different, and what our goals and our targets are going to be different.
Kascha sees about 20 veterans either on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. And there isn't necessarily a way to explain what a typical session looks like, as Kascha says each session looks different, depending on how they feel and what's happened in their day prior to their meeting. But she usually starts the session with a check-in, asking what has happened since the last time she saw them. And if she gave them an assignment to do, which can include journaling, creative writing, and positive self-talk, she asks about that as well. Then it's whatever they want.
And so those are great. I love it when they are more client driven, so that they're just really taking charge of how their mental health is progressing and what they want to address. But at the same time too, it's also refreshing just to kind of see the ones that they had no plan coming in that like day. And they're just, I mean, we'll sit there for a few minutes, and for me, it's now comfortable silence. Just because again, I know them, but I just kind of wait and let them just kind of decide like where they're going, as far as like what they want to talk about. Or, you know, so I have had a couple where they're like, honestly, can we just sit here for an hour and I just need to sit here in silence. And I'm like, if that is what you feel you need in this moment today, that is perfectly fine.
One of the veterans she sees is Darian.
That's been awesome. Just having that conversation with someone that is emotionally mature enough to have that conversation. And then also just knowing that the conversation I have with her is going to be kept behind closed doors is very important.
Darian served in the United States Air Force for 8 years, from 2008 to 2016. He knew about HVAF and its resources for veterans, but felt hesitant to ever come in due to some pride, which is something we see a lot. But also, like with most veterans we serve, one day he realized he wanted to better his life and knew HVAF could give him the tools to do so. He first came to HVAF last year and currently lives in one of our transitional houses on the west side of Indianapolis. Darian is in our VetWorks Workforce Development Program, where he's getting the training and education he needs to become a project manager. He also visits our pantry a few times a month, where he receives his essential food, clothing, and hygiene items. And unlike other veterans I've spoken to, therapy has always felt normal to Darian. He actually went to therapy while in the Air Force after losing his mother.
So when I was active duty, I lost my mom. So when I was in the Air Force, I kind of already started going to therapy, and I saw the value of it at that time, as well as a little bit of mental health strategy that my mom gave me when I was younger. So I just knew like, okay, I just need to hop back into therapy. So I went to Kascha. One thing I've learned a lot about just talking to a lot of vets here, because a lot of people are like in the 60s compared to me being in my 30s, 30 years apart. The military has changed tremendously from when they went in compared to us. Like I know for myself as Air Force, mental health training is like 4 times a year, maybe even more, depending on the unit. They kind of really like death by PowerPoint you a lot about that. And in the Air Force, they really promote mental health therapy, about going to like the MPF to get that done, or going to a chaplain too. And I've done both. I went to a chaplain and I went to a mental therapist. And it's awesome. Like they tell you in the Air Force, there's 3 different sides of you that you have to really take care of, which is your mental health, your spiritual health, and your physical health.
Darian has appreciated his sessions with Kascha, as it's nice to have someone who understands him. He said she has helped him become more open and vulnerable, how to set boundaries with others, and how to not worry about what others think of him. Providing therapy for veterans means a lot to Kascha. All of the men in her family, including her husband, served in the military in some capacity. But one man that has made a lasting impact on her career choice is her grandfather. After serving in the Korean War, Kascha's grandfather ended up homeless for a few years. When he told her about his experience, she noticed how much he talked about the kindness of those who helped him. She says now with the people she works with, she looks at them not only as someone she's working with, but also how this is someone's family member. She remembers how people were kind to her grandfather and helped him get his life together. So she hopes she can be one of those people that helps somebody else's family member get their life back together again. She encourages veterans, and everyone really, To not be afraid to seek out therapy. Even if they've had a bad experience, try at least one more time.
I think with veterans, anyone in general, like you need someone to be able to kind of talk to that maybe isn't as attached like emotionally to the situation, because we can talk to friends and family, and I always encourage that they do. Like that's going to be your biggest like support network is, always talk to friends and family. Yeah. But there's certain topics that they just might be really uncomfortable talking about. And so sometimes it's a blessing to be able to talk to somebody who has no emotional attachment to a situation. Doesn't know who any of the people that it involves, like you're, bouncing those ideas off of, having someone else look at it with a fresh set of eyes that can give you a perspective that somebody else wouldn't be able to. And I think there is also, while originally it can be really intimidating to tell, your problems to a complete stranger, it can also just be really refreshing, because at the end of the day, like you leave and no one knows what you're dealing with. Like you can go back to, go back to work, go back to your family, whatever the case is. And you also feel like this huge burden's been lifted off of your shoulders. Not every session is like super emotionally draining where, everyone's leaving crying. We have those moments where, we're going to talk about the tough stuff for sure, because we got to deal with them. At the same time, we can have sessions where it's going to be more lighthearted conversation that they initiate, where they just kind of want to tell you like, hey, my kid just graduated, or, I just got this, recognition for doing something. And those conversations are also equally beneficial, because it's also helping to build that rapport with the veteran to where they feel like this is their safe place to talk. It's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to say that you're not okay. And with that though, it's okay to also ask for help.
Darian also encourages his fellow veterans to come see Kascha for therapy.
This is just my mindset. You're not useful to people if you can't really handle yourself. You're not useful to yourself. You're not useful to your family. You're not useful, to anybody really if you just can't ask for help. I know it's hard, but it's important to actually take that time and just saying, okay, let me talk to somebody.
If you are a veteran interested in finding out more about HVAF's therapy services, please don't hesitate to reach out. Kascha can serve any veteran, not just veterans in our programming, and she can meet with you in person or virtually. So what are you waiting for? For more information, feel free to give us a call on our main line, 317-951-0688, or send an email to hvaf@hvaf.org. Our contact information can be found on our website, hvaf.org, and all of this will be included in today's show notes. And again, if you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, please know there is hope. Please call 988 and press 1 or text 838-255. All right, that wraps up this episode of Roger That. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to Roger That on wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on social media at HVAF of Indiana. And for even more stories on HVAF and the veterans that we serve, check out our blog on our website at hvaf.org. Thank you, and until no hero is homeless, we'll see you next time on Roger That, a podcast presented by HVAF of Indiana.